Greetings, Mike here from Taylor Toolworks. I want to spend the next few minutes talking to you about pressure sensitive adhesive or PSA sanding discs. Now this may not sound like a very interesting subject, but I promise you if you stick with me to the end, you will find some very interesting and useful applications for these discs in your shop. So by way of background, when I set up my first shop, this is the sander that I bought, this type of sander, as this was the only type of sander available and it used PSA discs. So over the years of using this sander and having these discs laying around, I found some interesting uses for them in the shop. And I plan to share with you no less than 18 different applications of these sanding discs in the wood shop. So when I speak of these PSA discs, I'm going to be talking about one specific kind, and that is the 3M Cubitron 775L stick discs. These are my go-to disc. I don't use anything else. Why is that? First, they are made from the 3M patented precision shaped grain. Now what that is a patented ceramic abrasive that's made into like little triangles. So these triangles, when they sand, they don't just abrade wood like most abrasives, like this rock from my garden, and just grind wood away. They actually slice through the wood. Now this slices very cleanly, produces less heat, prolongs the life of the abrasive. And what happens is when these dull, the edges don't just round over, they actually break off like this, and they expose new sharp edges. So it's very aggressive and it's long lasting. The next thing about these discs that I like so much is that the backing is filmed. It's really, really tough. You can't tear this stuff. So it lasts a long time. And the other thing is the adhesive on the back, the sticky back adhesive, or the stick-it as they call it, is very aggressive. Sticks very well, and it's easy to remove. And when you do remove it, it doesn't leave a residue. So these discs come in two sizes, 5-inch and 6-inch, and we have applications for both. They have grits from 80 to 400. And so let's dive right in and let's look at some of the different uses for PSA discs in your shop. Okay, let's start this series. This is use number 1 of these Cubitron, 3M Cubitron film back, stick it, or hook PSA sanding discs. So my number 1 use for these is sanding blocks. You can just take a piece of sandpaper and just stick it to a block of wood, a square block of wood, and it'll work fine. I tend to like my sanding blocks to be the same shape as the sanding disc. Actually, just a little smaller. I actually make these about 4 7/8 and for a 5-inch disc. And then I take my piece and I'll cut it 2 inches narrower than the actual outside diameter or the diameter of the disc. That lets the sandpaper bend up on the side about 1 inch, which is just about perfect. And then you can make them several ways. Like this one here, I just drew a line here, 4 7/8. I just cut it out on the bandsaw, and then I just sanded this straight on the sander. This one here, I cut it at about a 20-degree angle. And this actually is nice because my palm fits right in there pretty nicely. And then another thing to keep in mind is that you want to put some kind of cushioning on the bottom of your sanding block. This allows the block to kind of adjust to the different undulations in the wood. If it's just a straight piece of wood like this, it would take a long time for you to sand it flat. This just helps you get it flat much quicker. You can either use this craft foam here that I get from Michael's. It's $1 a sheet. It's pretty spongy. When you attach this, you can either use contact cement, which is messy, or I recommend that you use this fast cap speed tape that sticks it on here really good, never going to come off. Or you can use this cork rubber that we have available at Tay Tools. You can this is sticky back. You just cut a piece, stick it on, and then trim it. And then you can have this is a lot stiffer though. The cork's a lot stiffer, which is nice. I have a couple different ones on hand depending on the application. Another thing to keep in mind is you want to lacquer this because the sandpaper sticks much better to a lacquered surface than it just does raw wood. Another thing to keep in mind, this is actually a piece of southern yellow pine, which is much more dense than this 2x4 I used here. And this is actually nicer. I like it. It's a little more mass. It's nice. It gives me a little more weight. Just by way of background, here's some of my old sanding blocks that I used to use. I just used to use a piece of plywood and I just stapled a piece of sandpaper to it. This one here is one that has some foam on it. It's got this thing in the top I got to take apart and cut the paper. It's just a pain. And because it takes so much longer, I don't change my paper very much. As you can see, this needs to be changed. And that needed to be changed about two years ago. So these, you just peel the paper off, put a new disc on, and you're good to go. And it's great. You can do a round one. I did a round one here. This is just a round one. It's about 4 7/8 diameter disc. This gives me a nice big surface area. I got a big knob on here. I can fair a nice big profile on there. Another option you can do is like when I'm trying to sand down inside this groove or this profile, I don't want to knock this edge off. I took this block here and I trimmed the paper off so that I have a safe edge here. And when I sand in here, I just sand the profile and I don't have to worry about knocking off that crisp edge there. So here's some options for sanding discs using this 3M 775 Cubitron film back stick it discs.